lobby group Afriforum has approached the Constitutional Court to remove former Western Cape High Court Judge John Hlophe from the Judicial Service Commission. Hlophe, who was impeached earlier this year, was found guilty by a Judicial Conduct Tribunal of gross misconduct for attempting to improperly influence two Constitutional Court justices in a 2008 case involving former President Jacob Zuma. Well, Afriforum CEO Kallie Kriel joins us now for more on the application to the Apex Court. Mr. Kriel, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I think I want to start with the argument that has been put forward by the MK party for weeks, as this has been a talking point, saying, well, John Hlophe is a member of parliament who qualifies as a member of parliament and is bound by the oath of office. What do you say to that before we get into some of the submissions that you're making to the Concourt?
Yes, good morning to you, ma'am. You're welcome to just call me Kallie. Well, I think that is the case with regard to a member of parliament, that they can be appointed. But of course, parliament also functions under the constitution of the country, which is the highest law. And if you go and look at what the constitution says in Article 165, it says the National Assembly has an obligation to make sure that they protect and promote the courts so that the courts are independent, that the dignity of the courts are protected, that the courts are effective. And if you look at this situation where somebody that has been found unfit to be a judge will now sit on a panel and decide which aspiring judges are fit to be a judge, that cannot be. That affects the integrity of the court negatively. So in this case, the Constitution as the highest law should get preference, and therefore Judge or Dr. Hlophe should not be appointed. It does not mean that anybody is silenced. MK would be welcome to appoint somebody else that is somebody that has not been found to be unfit, that has not been found to be dishonest, and that has not made themselves guilty of gross misconduct as a judicial officer.
Yeah, the reason why I start with the argument made by the MK about him being an MP in this discussion is because you've also raised the issue of him even becoming a member of parliament, saying that in and of itself is untoward. Unpack that for us.
Yes, and no, from our side, we did not raise that. I don't think there are any legal hurdles for him to become a member of parliament. But the question is, of course, but that is a subjective view of mine. It's not a legal view. I think we want the best people to be in parliament, also people from varying views. But you need people in parliament with integrity. But there's no measure for that. There are no rules for that. But that is only something we can hope for. But there's, of course, Dr. Hlophe is a member of parliament. We respect that. There's nothing we can do about it. But at least we can make an objection to say he should not be in a position where he assesses other people that want to be judges.
Yeah. Freedom Under Law has taken this issue up, though. They've pursued it with the High Court. Why was it important for you then to take it up as well as a lobby group?
Well, I think there are different routes that can be taken. We did not coordinate with Freedom Under Law, so I don't know specifically what their arguments are. But there are two routes, and we contemplated both. One is going to the High Court, or the other one is going directly to the Constitutional Court. We decided on going directly to the Constitutional Court, saying that we believe they have exclusive discretion in this regard. We also think that they are the people that should be able to decide. But the most important thing is this is urgent because the JSC sits again in October. And the JSC will have interviews for appointing the judge president in the Western Cape. And, you know, to have somebody like Dr. Hlophe sit on that panel while he has to appoint somebody in a position where he was kicked out. And one of the candidates, Judge Goliath, we know that from Dr. Hlophe's side, there's a lot of animosity towards Judge Goliath. So that process won't be fair. That's why we went this route. If we are not successful, well, then it's great that Freedom Under Law started from the High Court, if we don't get direct access, because this needs to become, this case needs to be before the courts. And I think both routes are covered now.
Okay, I just want to look at who has been served electronically, if you will, the court documents, and if you've gotten any response from the respondents.
No, they have, of course, they had 10 days to respond. We served the Speaker of the National Assembly because they are the first respondents. It's the National Assembly that has an obligation to protect the courts, and it's the National Assembly that decided to put Dr. Hlophe in this position. But then, of course, the other affected parties are Dr. Hlophe himself and the MK party. So we have not received any feedback from those three parties.
Yeah. You know, we've talked a little bit about the role of the National Assembly, and you talk about Article 165 of the Constitution, you know, the bodies of our leaders really having that responsibility to protect our judiciary and our courts. What do you think the message is then when you've got parties like the ANC, the MK party, EFF, UDM, ATM, supporting the appointment of John Hlophe to the JSC?
Well, that is an unfortunate message because we must remember all of us are negatively affected, even supporters of the EFF, supporters of the ANC, supporters of the MK party, because all of us would want to know, if you go to a court, you would have a judge that serves without fear, favor, or prejudice, a judge that will be objective as far as possible, as far as humanly possible. And if we're going to have break that system down, all of us would suffer, because we might at some stage, all of us have to be before a judge, and we need to have the assurance. So it's unfortunate. We think they're acting against the interests of even their own supporters.
Yeah, you've been quite busy though as Afriforum, hasn't you? Because you've also taken up the matter of VBS into your own hands as well. Talk to us about where you are with this case of corruption, of fraud, money laundering as well against EFF's Julius Malema and Floyd Shivambu. Where you are in that process, and also why the focus on those particular two leaders when there are so many people that have been implicated?
Yes, most definitely. I'd like to answer that. Let me just say we are a watchdog organization. And if we are busy like this, it's actually unfortunate because it means that there is a lot of corruption and injustice going on. Why we focused on specifically Mr. Malema is that it seems as if there is a reluctance by the National Prosecuting Authority to act against him. And why we say this is that we know of the on-point corruption scandal where Mr. Malema, there was allegations made against him where he was implicated. And initially, the NPA started to prosecute him, but when one of his co-accused got sick, when the matter was withdrawn, and when it was taken up again, Mr. Malema was not included. We believe in equality before the law, and if there is a reluctance, we'll have to intervene. With regard to the other people, of course, they should be held accountable. And if we see that there's also a reluctance from the NPA to prosecute them, we will also intervene in those matters.
Yeah, are you seeing some light at the end of the tunnel with the 159 million rand that has been recovered? Of course, the depositors and investors still asking themselves whether or not they're going to be getting their money back.
Yes, that is a terrible thing because we know that the VBS bank, of course, was not a bank of necessarily the rich. It was a lot of poor people that deposited their money there. It's, of course, there needs to be a process to recover as much money as possible. But I think parallel, what is also important is that justice should be done and that a strong message is sent out. If you're going to steal, you're going to be held accountable. And hopefully the penalty or the judgment would be even harsher if the money that was being stolen was money of poor, desperate people.
Yeah, all right. Mr. Kallie Kriel, an absolute pleasure speaking to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Kallie Kriel is, of course, the CEO of Afriforum that is taking the matter of John Hlophe on the JSC all the way to the Apex Court. This is as Freedom Under Law, of course, pursues a similar process, but they've headed to the High Court, the division in Gauteng, set to sit in October, though.